tomorrow and in the coming days, we will have a good idea of what happened in the 2022 midterms. In this video, the final video I make about the midterms before they happen, I want to talk about the 10 most likely statewide races, so Senate and gubernatorial races that flip. This is based on my own personal analysis, given the facts, so I'm not using anyone's rating. And at the number 10 spot, I am going to put it as the Oregon gubernatorial election. There was a brief point in which the Republican candidate had an ever so slight advantage in the governor polls for Oregon, but they have since reversed course. I think that it's going to wind up being at a 0.8%, 0.9% victory for the Democratic candidate, which will still be the closest Oregon gubernatorial race in a while. Best race for Republicans since 1982 when they actually won the governorship, I think. It would still be interesting. The Democrat was never doing too well to begin with. And when a third-party left-leaning candidate became involved, it became even worse for the Democratic candidate. So much so to the point where I think that a chance of winning have voted to about 58, 59%. That still is good, but I want you to know that below 60% is really those most competitive head-to-head type races. So, in this case, I do think that the Oregon governor race has a good chance of flipping, but at this point, just falls a little bit short. At the number 9 spot, I am going to put this one down as the I'm going to put this one down as the Wisconsin governorship election. Personally, I think this race is a little bit more competitive than the Oregon one, but Tony Evers is a relatively good incumbent, and while I think it's going to be a close race, given how Wisconsin races these days have always tended to wind up being toss-ups, I don't think that Wisconsin is going to flip. I think that Tony Evers will still win by a margin similar to what Trump won by in 2016 or what Biden won by in 2020, i.e. hovering around 0.7%. That's still pretty good for the Democrats, though. If they can hold on to Wisconsin, that's going to be key. Because if the Wisconsin Republicans maintain their legislative chambers, then it would give the Republicans a trifecta. So for Democrats, I don't think that they can get their own trifecta, but blocking a Republican trifecta with their left-leaning Supreme Court should be good enough for now. So again, I think that in Wisconsin we'll have the 9th closest race as far as governorship goes. And number 8 is Senate. I know that the polls have all been saying Ron Johnson is going to be doing well, but when you really think about it, it's a Trump acolyte where Trump did lose by 0.63% back in 2020. So I think Ron Johnson is going to win, but only by about 0.7%. I don't think Ron Johnson will be able to win by that much. I think he's going to win, but I think it's going to definitely be a bit of a competitive race for Ron Johnson. At number 7, we have the Nevada governor race. The Nevada Senate race. The Nevada Senate race, personally, I think, even though the polls have all been going towards the Republicans recently, the polls tend to overestimate Republican support there. It's one of the very few states where Republican support tends to be overestimated. The people actually thought that in 2016, the state would wind up going to Donald Trump. Instead, it went to Hillary Clinton. The political maps in Nevada never show the true story, because even though it only shows one county having a slight majority to the Democrats, or at best two, we have to realize that that one county is Clark County. That houses about 75% of Nevada's population. So if they can carry that, then they're pretty much set. And personally, I think Catherine Cortez Masto will get a 0.5% victory. That's not very good. And I'd only put a chance at about 54%. But, that's still relatively decent. So, at number 6, I am putting the Georgia Senate race. And the Georgia Senate race, for me, I'm putting as an even, flat-out toss-up. I think, honestly, that Walker and Warnock have equal chances of winning this race. And I am too uncomfortable saying one will win over the other. So, no matter who wins in Georgia, I'm not going to be surprised. Honestly, I think the biggest surprise for me would be this race not coming down to a runoff. Obviously, as you know, in Georgia, you need 50% of the vote. I don't think that this race will be won without a runoff. I think that a runoff will be necessary to determine the winner of the U.S. Senate seat from Georgia. Of course, this can wind up turning the election one way or the other. And if we wind up seeing 50 Republican seats in the Senate and 49 Democratic seats, then obviously this is going to get a lot more media attention than it would otherwise, because it would tip control of the Senate back over to Democrats, which right now the chance of Democrats holding on to the Senate is not very good right now, 45%. But it's a lot better than the chance of holding on to the House, which right now is 15%. So, at the number 5 spot, I am putting the Nevada governor race. I think that by about 0.5%, the Republican will win the race for the governor in Nevada. Why do I think that the Nevada governor is going to go red and the Senate will stay blue? I think that the Senate is going to stay blue just because governor races tend to be skewed more by local politics than like governor elections. And I think that honestly this red wave in Nevada will hit a little bit harder to home in the governorship race. Also, the polls just are saying that Republicans have a slightly better chance, and I would personally give the Republicans a 55% chance at flipping this race. 55% is still a dead heat, though, and I want you to understand that things don't really begin to solidify up until you're into the 70s of percent. 50s is still pretty much dead even. Now, at number 4, I am putting the Pennsylvania Senate race. The Pennsylvania Senate race, I think that John Fetterman will win by about 0.8%. 0.8% has, to me, about a 59% chance of victory, maybe even 60. What it really is that Dr. Oz is known as a quack. People don't trust him because he is not a very good doctor. Now, this is certainly a lot more competitive than the Pennsylvania governor race. I think the Pennsylvania governor race, like 2018, will be a landslide because they picked Doug Mastriano. But I think that John Fetterman, with his stroke and his recent health issues, there are points where he had over an 80% chance of victory. But then it really tumbled. He did a bad job in one of his speeches, and I think that, honestly, he should have dropped out when he had a stroke, if I was to be a Democratic supporter, which I am not. But Connor Lamb could have done a much better job. I think that I was rooting for Connor Lamb from the beginning. I was a bit upset when he lost to John Fetterman, and I think that now that Fetterman had a stroke, it really should be time for He should have dropped out then. He should have let Conor Lamb take over. That being said, Dr. Oz is a really sketchy candidate, which is going to lead, I think, enough independents to not vote at all, to still tilt it over to the to the Democratic side. Unlike Wisconsin, which I think is a pure toss-up state, Pennsylvania is a bit more slightly blue leaning. I will definitely say, though, that of the Rust Belt trifecta, Michigan is the bluest of the 3 states, and that shows. Because even though right now they all look identical and whatnot, we'll probably see that change after the midterm. You'll probably see the political landscape of these 3 states not be so identical, but who knows? We'll see what happens. Now, in the number 3 spot, this was one that I haven't really planned out so well. I know what number 1 and number 2 are going to be, and I bet that you do too. But number 3 is one that I haven't really planned out so well. When I thought about this, I was just thinking, and I realized where, like what could happen. So I'm gonna be honest, I haven't planned out this one as well as I really should have, and I apologize for that. Nonetheless, if I have to come up with something on the fly, I'm going to probably just say the U.S. Senate as a whole. And again, I'm sorry for not thinking up ahead of time, but I would have to put the U.S. Senate down. The reason why I think the Senate as a whole is because even though, yes, the polls, the 538 did say 55% chance, when you factor in all the races, to me, I think that it does make the case a little bit stronger for Republicans. And it's about the same as Fetterman, just that Fetterman's race I planned out more. If I was to do a responsible job making this video, I probably would have put something else as number 10. I made Oregon number 9. So, but obviously number 1 and number 2, really it's equal. It's the Maryland and Massachusetts governor races. Maryland's race, when everyone knew Larry Hogan was going to be retired, same with Massachusetts, everyone knew. Well, actually, Massachusetts was due to the retirement, and we'll talk about that. So, in Maryland, Larry Hogan was forced to retire. So, everyone knew from the beginning that this race would probably go Democrat. But the ratings at first were more of this, like, lean blue category with really a toss-up being on the table. People thought that Larry Hogan, being a good Republican, might be able to propel the Republicans to victory, although it seemed a little bit unlikely. Those odds just got unlikely as time went on, especially because a very Trump-like candidate has been picked in Maryland. And as you know, if you're in a very, very, very blue state and you want to even have a chance of winning, then you don't pick candidates that are not centrists. Honestly, you really need to have these liberal Rockefeller-type Republicans to have a chance. It appears Trump has unfortunately hijacked the Republican Party, and Republicans are only somewhat backing away from him. I really think that Maryland can't stand a chance having a Republican governorship last because of this loss of Larry Hogan. And when I started out, I was thinking, okay, maybe the Republicans have a 10% chance. And then I went, okay, it's probably more like 8, and then 5. Now I honestly think it's less than 1, and same for Massachusetts. Massachusetts at first seemed a solid lock for Republicans, but devastating news came the Republicans' way on December 1st when Charlie Baker announced his intention to retire. Because he is not running again, this devastated the Republican Party, and their chances of winning the Massachusetts governorship have practically hit rock zero after this. Massachusetts is certainly a state where Republican governors have been elected despite the state being blue. However, once you pick a Trump acolyte, it's game over. Massachusetts is one of the bluest states in the country. And when you look at their state senate, I mean, it's 90% blue anyway. Like in Maryland, this applies too. These Republicans can't veto anything because their vetoes will be overridden already. So it's already like a trifecta in a way. The same also applies on the other side with Kansas and Kentucky. And I mean, honestly, when you look at it, Vermont and Louisiana, they're super close to supermajority that if they can get some people of the opposite party to agree, then they can override the governor's veto. So I think that is really where Republicans have screwed up. And in just some cases have had bad luck. But honestly, I do think that the Republicans are going to be able to carry it through in the end. I do obviously foresee a red house. The Senate, I think, could go either way, but I am leaning towards it being slightly red-leaning at this point in time. Whew.